Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Oscar vs. Trevor here, joined by Thomas. And it is time. I know it's February,
Finally.
but we wanted to get caught up, make sure that we could actually see everything that we wanted to. It is time for our top 10 films of the year. Obviously, there's still gonna be stuff that both of us missed. I ended up at like 150 as far as films. I know you were on like 80.
80, 77. So
We'll give you
round
80. We'll give you 80.
Exactly.
But yeah, so this will be our top 10 films of 2023. I think we both feel pretty good about our lists.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll just go back and forth, count down. Let's start out with some honorable mentions. Do you want to kick us off with yours?
Sure, there are a couple, and I wanna highlight maybe a couple that are slightly more under the radar. Rye Lane, people have heard of it, people know it, but it's a brilliant film, and it's in my top 15. It's a very charming film, good romance, good sort of back and forth dialogue, all of that kind of stuff. The Teacher's Lounge, very tense, great lead performance, and just one of the best international feature contenders that we had this year. Rotting in the Sun, a bunch of fun. It's on Movie, you should go check it out. Now, Oppenheimer, one of the best theatrical experiences. We've talked about Oppenheimer, but I don't think it'll be in your list. It's not in
known,
mine.
underseen, and underrated.
Exactly.
Film,
well, that one's slightly low. But that one was close to getting into the top 10 just based off of theatrical experience. I think I've rewatched it twice. I think the second time it only gets better. And then this is why I'm glad we did wait. I didn't end up making my top 10, but UK release date Sark and the Iron Claw. Managed to finally see it on Friday. So, and it's as good as everyone says it. It's truly impeccable. I'm very much on the Zac Efron hype train. Sadly, a little bit too late now to have been joining that. But yeah, great ensemble, great just deconstruction of masculinity and family and all of these kind of things. And it tells all of those themes and all of these ideas and explores them through a very personal, very just captivating story within itself. So yeah, glad we waited because it did almost crack my top 10. It is number 11 currently. But yeah, The Iron Claw, brilliant.
Yep. I'm going to run through mine. I have a few more, but some of them are films that you've all seen. So Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Barbie, Spider-Verse, all came very, very close to making my list. I've seen all of them multiple times. I've seen Spider-Verse like 3 times. I've seen Poor Things 4 times. I've seen Oppenheimer 6 and Barbie 7. Like love all of those movies for very different reasons. We have reviews for them. We don't need to keep on talking about them. A couple other ones that came really, really close for me. Priscilla, I thought was excellent. Just so well crafted. Love like the really stripped back approach to Priscilla's story that Sofia Coppola took. I thought Kaylee Spaney was incredible. Really just loved this dissection of that period of America through Priscilla's lens. Really loved it. Skinamarink, horrifying theatrical experience. I love this like modern wave of like just like queer like video horror, I guess is how I'm gonna put it. And just like these very like odd reflections on growing up. We saw that with We're All Going to the World's Fair by Jane Schoenbrunn, and I'm sure their new film I saw TV Glow. And then I think Skin Ring falls in that category. Amazing movie. Asteroid City, one of my favorite Wes Andersons. I love how it dissects the idea of playing yourself and this such an abstracted sense of self that comes particularly after a tragedy and kind of like a world-changing event that was after nuclearization. And I think we see that now with like the internet and COVID and everything like that. And it feels very, very timely in a very Wes Anderson way. And my last one, About Dry Grasses, I'm going to have a review for it soon. Neri Bialy-Chelan. Amazing, amazing film. Don't let the runtime off-put you. It's like 3.5 hours long, but it is very, very easy to get engaged in this guy's really messed up mind and how he sees the world as a teacher. And it is an incredible psychological character study. Okay. On to the top 10s. You want to kick it off?
Sure. My number 10 is Passages. And now this did get a bit of love on the sort of indie scene. Francis Wogowski was getting into places. It's a shame that never materialized because he gives one of my favorite performances of the year. The opening is, I think, one of the best openings in any film this year. And it just it's such a good encapsulation of everything that the film is about. And he is such an arsehole to watch, but it's in that Succession sort of way where you just become so compelled in watching his character's journey and watching his drama and watching him just be a chaotic presence that it doesn't really matter if he's an arsehole to the people around him. You kind of just love him anyway. It's also got some great supporting performances. Ben Whishaw, obviously, being chief among them. And yeah, it's just it's very energetic. It's got a real energy about it that I really appreciated. It's exploring a lot of stuff, but it's doing it in a very fun, energetic, and passionate. It felt like the people behind the film really just wanted to make this film and really just get a story out here. And that's what I really appreciated about it. It felt like the filmmakers were having fun making it, and therefore that carries over to you watching it. It's a fun film to watch. It's very easy to get into. It's very breezy watch. It's very engaging. And so, yeah, just like genuinely just a great, it's not the deepest thing in the world. There are films that are probably objectively better than it this year, but in terms of personal enjoyment, just a fun time watching a film, I think this hits in all the beats, whilst also having some of the best performances and some of the best moments as well. So yeah, that's my number 10.
Nice. Was very happy on my list. My number 10 is All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt by Raven Jackson. One of the first films I saw in the year. It was my first movie of Sundance at the beginning of 2023. Still thinking about it a lot over a year later. I just thought it was a stunning debut by Raven Jackson. I will watch anything that she puts in front of me forever. I can see why it wasn't for everybody. It is quite tedious in its pace, and it's very abstract, I think, in how it plays with its ideas. But I don't know. I found it so inviting to engage with. I thought particularly how it played with the relationship between fire and water, in regards to the community and passing of time in the place. It's a film that draws back narratively, I think, to just like allow you to feel thematically in how it uses its form, in the way that it's constructed as far as its editing, in the way that it's shot, which is just like it has a very objective lens with a focus on hands and water and all these types of things. It's very much a movie that you feel, which is why I think it's hard to talk about in some ways. But I don't know if it feels like something that you would like. I would definitely recommend experiencing it, because it is if it hits for you, then it's a really like just fantastic, like emotional ride that Jackson takes you on. So yeah, really loved it.
No, I would recommend watching it. I
know you weren't
felt
even
like it was a
100%
film.
happy.
Exactly, it was a film that definitely knew what it wanted to be. I really got Raven Jackson's voice through it, and as you say, I would be excited to see what she does next. I don't think it quite executed in all of its ideas. I don't think it quite all came together, but the ideas are there and the voice is there. So,
and it was very much more of a me film than a you film.
Exactly,
I think,
exactly.
always.
But there is still a lot to appreciate, and it's still a film I would recommend watching.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, my number 9, and this one's interesting. I've been on Journey where I feel like I keep prefacing the fact that objectively there are problems. Objectively, it's not as good as other films, but still, it's one of the most important films that I saw this year, and that's Barbie. It has dropped a fair significant bit from where it was even a matter of days ago. But just when I was compiling this top 10 list, when I was making sure that it was all where I wanted it to be, it just felt weird having Barbie above certain films. So I did have to drop it down a bit, because there are problems there that do exist. I don't really want to go into them because they're not the parts of the film that I love. Exactly. There's deconstructions by why the plot doesn't really make sense in parts, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, this film made me feel a certain way. It's a film that puts you into this feeling. It puts you into the state. It's very transformative in where you're watching it, and you just soak up in everything. If you're willing to accept the film will accept you with open arms. And it's just an incredible theatrical experience. It's so much fun. It's so funny. And there's all the technical elements there that, are obviously on display and are obviously impressive. But it's really about the screenplay. I feel this film really works in just building these ideas subtly, whilst on the surface it feels quite explicit and over the top and beating you on the head with messages. It's actually very subtle in what it's doing in parts, and especially in the development of Barbie.
The dual character development. I know we talked about,
It's subtle. It's not this like overbearing thing. Sure, you've got America Ferrera's monologue, which kind of explicitly laid out some ideas, but those are not the only ideas the film explores. It's actually doing a lot more under the surface. And so I think that it still deserves a place on any top 10, but especially for me. I mean, if you've read my Letterboxd review, you've read the Letterboxd review. If not, go and read it for some more sort of in-depth thoughts about why personally it really hit me. And that's the thing with these top 10. Sometimes it's just about what really personally resonates with you this year. And when I think about 2023 in film, I can't detach that thought from Barbie as an entity. So gotta have a place.
I mean, for me, like, it was really close to mine. I think at the beginning of the year, if you told us that it would be in your top 10 and not mine, both of us would have laughed in each other's face.
Raise a few eyebrows, but there you go.
But I mean, yeah, obviously, I saw it 7 times in theaters. I adore the movie. And again, with the top 10, like, for me, how I treat it, which again, everybody's gonna have different ways that they treat their top 10. I don't really think that there is a way to rank films in a way. Like, it's so hard to compare film to film as it is, and to rank them. Like, it's, people spent hundreds of hours of their life, if not thousands of hours of their life, working on these things. So like, rankings are all just arbitrary. So I wanted to use some of the spots to highlight some films that I felt were getting less attention. But like, I mean, yeah, Barbie is I like it a lot, even through all of its flaws. It's an important film for me as well. So.
Especially just ranking films, we've had such a, I feel like, variety this year in terms of films we received. Like, it's really hot. It's really weird pitting them against each other to go, well, that really is that, because that's sort of just fun, but that's sort of very serious. It's a very weird thing ranking films this year, especially looking at my top 10 and when compiling, I was like, these are very hard films to compare. Year for film. So this top 10 is not really a solid order, but sort of just where my mental state is at.
It's
right
vibes.
now.
It's vibes.
So, exactly. 100%.
Speaking of hard pivot, my number 9 is Showing Up by Kelly Reichardt.
Yeah, there you go.
So I am a massive Kelly Reichardt fan. I want to be Kelly Reichardt when I grow up. Like, I think that her and Celine Sciamma are the two best contemporary filmmakers right now, at least for me. They're the people who resonate the most with me right now. I think that Kelly Reichardt just understands art in America in a way that I've never seen someone else articulate, and just the intersection of those two things, and how culture plays into both, but also how America doesn't really have a culture, and how art can kind of fill that void for people. And in a lot of her films, she's doing that subtextually, just it's like the existence of the art about the film or about the subject. But this is very directly about the creation of art, and it's about not being able to make art, and it's about being stuck, and everything kind of swirling around you while you're just focusing on this one thing that you want to do, and none of it is working. And as someone who constantly is trying to make things, 90% of them never going to see the light of day, it felt very personal in that way. It's probably her funniest film. It's different than a lot of others in the way that it isn't as like deliberately paced. But it still has that Kelly Reichardt feel, which is, I think, hard to explain, but she just has this feeling to her films, which is just, it's very warm and tender and American in a lot of ways, in the good and the bad of that. So yeah, I think great performances. Michelle Williams, Hong Chow, John McGarrow, all fantastic. Andre 3000 is in this for some reason, and he's actually good. So yeah, just loved a lot of it. It's very much a comfort film. Just I don't know, Kelly Reichardt films, just films to vibe to, and then also think about if you want to.
So. For sure. My number 8, and now this I sort of make equivalent to like my Mars 1 of this year, where it's just a film that it doesn't necessarily really strike you the first time you watch it, but just it creeps into your brain and slowly sort of just works its magic on you, and that is Totem. And I don't think any other film really this year has quite put you in a perspective in quite the same way, where you are fully absorbed into this child's perspective. You are viewing this world of adults, and it's the way it's edited. Like, you sort of get half conversations. You don't quite know what's going on at any point in time, but you sort of get what's going on through the dialogue. It's very subtle in that it's not just like, oh, if we film the camera from like a worm's eye view, then it looks like you're a child. No, it's about how the dialogue is constructed and how it is edited in a very chaotic manner, in order to make you feel like you don't know what's going on, but you're kind of getting grasped with it. And that's what this character is experiencing. And it all just comes to a head in excellent sort of final shot where it's just a long take on this on the girl's
And the
face.
sound design in that
And it
final
sounds
shot as
like,
well.
and everything sort of, and the lighting, it just goes onto this candle, and it's like this candle is symbolic of, you know, the connection with her father that's slowly sort of she's losing this connection. And it's all symbolic, and it all really works, and it's anchored by an incredible child performance. I think, you know, there's one other child performance this year, which I think we all know, who is probably the best, but like, it's damn near close. So yeah, definitely, I definitely recommend checking this one out. I was sad that it didn't get the international feature nom, because I think that would have helped it have a bit of exposure. But yeah, just an incredible experience all around, and just a really interesting deconstruction of what death is like for a child and how they react to these kind of things. So yeah, definitely love Totem.
Yeah, no, you put me onto this one, and it ended up very high on my list, and I think it would only get higher on a rewatch, to be honest. Yeah, it's a incredible film. It's really incredible. My number 8, it's a bigger one. It's Killers of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese.
And again, this is mirrors Barbie. If you were to tell me that you had Killers and I didn't, that would raise a few eyebrows. But hey, shut down.
No, Killers just blew me away. I mean, it's no secret that Lily Gladstone is my favorite performance of the year by anybody, full stop, period. Like, I think what Lily does in that film is like, it's one of the best performances I've seen. I was just so deeply emotionally affected by their work, like to the point where, and I think I mentioned this before, but I saw a picture of Lily out of costume just scrolling through Twitter the next day, and it just sent me down a mental spiral where I ended up tearing up, like because I just like Lily's, like, their screams and like their eyes, like there's one specific moment in the film where Molly, she asks what what Leo's character, what Ernest did, like what he put in the medicine, right? And just Lily's like screen presence and the physicality of her performance to just like hold on her face, and just it's just fantastic work. Like it's incredible. And I think that's so much of the film. Like it is so big in scope while also allowing itself to be so stripped back. And it's talking about, all of these really big ideas, and it feels very self-reflexive for Scorsese at this point in his career to reflect on true crime, which is something that he's made so much of his career about. And it's a film kind of about how a lot of people in America feel the need to, see history through this lens of entertainment and, true crime and all these types of things as a way to kind of let go of the guilt that we can feel about the past, and experience it in a way that can make us feel like a little bit better about ourselves. And he's doing that while also making a commentary on that thing. And I don't know, I think it is incredible. I think it's like an amazing film, and then the final sequence, if you've seen it, just elevates it to like masterpiece level. I think I think it's one of his strongest. It's close between this and Silence for me. I know that's very on brand. But like I know people have problems with the perspective. If you want to watch Thomas and I argue about that for 40 minutes, there's a video. But like I don't know. I think it works for what he's trying to communicate, because I really do think it's about just kind of how people perceive these events, and I think it's absolutely just excellent.
Yeah, and I do think that final scene is one of the biggest swings I've seen Scorsese take. And Scorsese is not.
I think it might be his biggest swing.
Risk averse, exactly. Scorsese's not. Because Scorsese's not a risk averse, right? He will take bold swings.
Yeah.
But the final scene really did. Yeah, it surprised me, and it did tie it all together in a quite a nice way. Yeah. Barring other problems I had, but we're not getting into this. This is a positive video. We're doing a top 10. So, my number 7 is another bigger one. We all know it. It's A Zone of Interest. It's a very difficult film to talk about, and we'll talk about it more later, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll be speaking about this later. Do you want to save discussing it for later?
I feel there's a lot of crossover anyway, so we might just be parking a lot of conversations till later.
That's fair.
As is, so I may as well say some of the things that really work for me now.
Sure.
I really, really liked the fact that this sound design was so juxtaposing the visuals. The sound design is so expressive in parts, but it's subtle as well. And then the visuals are so symbolic and do mean a lot, but they're very, they're very subtle within themselves, and it's about this disconnect, and all of that links in turn with the film's thesis that can we disconnect our, you know, can we feel can we feel anything towards these characters, knowing the underlying horror? Can we disconnect them in our brain? Can we disconnect the audio aspects of film to the visual aspects? It's one of the most interesting uses of the film form I've seen, not only all year, ever, to be honest. And it's about the way that in turn reflects upon some of the ideas that are in the film that I just think work phenomenally. And I think Glazer really knew what he was doing, and he had all these ideas, and I think he executed them to almost near perfection. The reason it isn't higher is just simply as a top 10. There are films that I feel mean more to me personally this year. There are films that I think if I'm looking at 2023, it's not going to be the first one that comes to my mind in like 20 years time. And that's what I was really looking for. Which are the films this year that I think in 20, 30, 50, on my deathbed will I still be thinking, and Will Zone Avengers? Maybe, but I don't know. I think it's just a very impressive experiment, and very worthy of a place. I think if you've seen it, if you've engaged with it, it will be in your top 10. It's one of those kind of films where it just has to be on there, just based on everything it's doing. So
yeah, it's for me pure cinema, and I'll be talking about it a lot later. My number 7 is Radu Jude's Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, one of the most fun titles of the year. This film is one of the most excellent depictions of just being a working person now. And I feel like we haven't had one of those films that is just like about, you know, it isn't necessarily like about the internet in a way, but it's just like kind of about like a younger millennial, older Gen Z person, just in this world, in dealing with a lot of contemporary things. And Alinze Manalace is incredible in this film, and it is just about her character driving around Bucharest to film a safety at work video for a like multinational like mega corporation, and it's very, very dodgy what it actually is for, very probably morally wrong, and it is incredibly funny. A lot of the movie is just her driving around and yelling and getting pissed off at other people on the streets of Bucharest, while also like fielding a bunch of calls, and it can get like quite chaotic and stressful. And then at points she just like, when she gets overwhelmed, she just like films a like TikToks as with an Andrew Tate filter, just saying the most misogynistic things that she can think of, to being Andrew Tate, and it is so funny. And also the actresses, her entire Instagram is just those videos, because she just used her actual Instagram, so you can go onto her Instagram, they're just all still there. It's so funny. And it's both like just this really delightful, funny film, while also being this kind of like harrowing commentary on just being a part of the workforce now, and how horrible capitalism is, and how late stage capitalism just really kind of affects everybody at a very deep, you know, deep level that feels kind of irreparable, and how everything feels kind of doomed and hopeless, and nothing will ever get better, and how we use all of these little vices as a way to just kind of like distract ourselves throughout the day, but also those things are really funny, and it strikes that balance really, really well. It's incredibly experimental with how it's using different footage to like establish its place in time and compare this time to other times. It's a very, very experimental film. I think it's absolutely excellent, though. Would really suggest seeking it out if you have the chance. I don't think it is out yet, but yeah.
Do you think
amazing.
I'd like it?
Maybe. I think you'd find things to appreciate about it. I don't think that you'd love it, but I think you'd like it. I think it's like, it would be at least a solid 7 for you.
Okay,
So,
fair enough. No,
yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. My number 6 is May December, and there's so much to rave about with this film. So I'll just take a specific lens, because you know we've all talked about the performances. Everyone knows Charles Melton's great. Whatever. I think what was most interesting about this film is in that debate, the debate we had about the Golden Globes, like, is it comedy, is it drama? I think that is the essence of this film, where it is deliberately campy. It is a comedy in many regards, but that is almost to try and dare you to sensationalize this, to try to dare you to sort of enjoy what's going on, to sort of take this, what is on the surface a very harrowing experience, but it flips it. And that in turn reflects sort of the media's flipping of it, which is explored in the film. It in turn reflects, you know, performance and art and how that tries to flip it. And it's all in this sort of this tonal inconsistency where you don't quite know if you're meant to laugh, if you're meant to feel empathy. You don't know what you're meant to
It's
feel.
really challenging.
And that in turn, yeah, that just sort of reflects everything that's going on. And that I find to be the most interesting aspect of the film. That's why I was very happy that that debate sort of did surface. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Because what is it? Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And I think that's sort of the point. It is trying to sensationalize it. It's trying to make you laugh. It's trying to make you ignore everything that's going on, everything that's quite horrific if you think about. But equally, yeah, it's still one of the funniest theatre experiences I've had. Whilst also one of the most emotional with that rooftop scene with Cheltenham's character and his child, where it's that line where he doesn't know if he's making a happy memory or a sad memory for him. And yeah, just an incredible film, an incredible voice behind it. Loved all the aesthetic choices and how that mirrored everything. Like even in its aesthetic, like choosing to deliberately surrealize all of what's going on. Just it all sort of comes together in a very nice package that creates one of the most satisfying viewing experiences of the year in my mind.
Yeah. I do think, just briefly, that with the comedy drama thing, I do think it can be ignored that a lot of people who feel that it is a comedy saw it in a theater at a festival.
That is true,
Where it is a
actually.
communal thing, because my theater was fucking losing it laughing throughout the film. And I think a lot of when that discourse started was when it hit Netflix, and a lot of people who are watching it alone. And I think without that kind of infectious energy of the theater, it didn't feel maybe as funny.
But which
So
is a better version of watching it? I don't know.
yeah,
Arguably, if you enjoyed it just on the surface as a drama, you can enjoy it. You can get just as much
yeah,
out of it, and that's what really works. It's a film. It's a film that does cross that bridge between watching in a theater, watching at home. I do think it really works just as well in both
yeah.
experiences and offers a very different experience each time. It's a film that really begs to be rewatched after you've seen it in the cinema. It's a film that begs to be rewatched again and again to sort of draw all of what's going on out of it. And plus, there's all those symbols and stuff like that with butterfly. There's
Oh,
a lot going on. There's a lot going on,
yeah.
and it all
Rebirth
fits.
and yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It all seems to fit in this nice little puzzle. It's a real puzzle of a film that I really appreciate.
Absolutely. Speaking of a bit of a puzzle film, my number 6 is Hirokazu Koreeda's Monster, which I know we'll be talking about for you in just a little bit, so I won't speak for too long. But yeah, it's one of the best uses of Rashomon storytelling that I've seen, and we have a review for it up on the channel. But I think particularly when dealing with like queer identity, and even not explicitly, because this film is never really like explicit about those ideas, but it's very much there. And I think particularly when you're younger, I really connected with this about how so much of sexuality, gender, all these things, they're completely and entirely a social construct, and social constructs will be viewed on differently through different lenses and different perspectives. So when you're young and you're trying to figure this out, and you're only able to access such a select few number of perspectives, I think it is so hard to try to categorize yourself and find yourself, because in reality, you can't categorize yourself under any of these things. You're just you, right? But that can feel really, really hard when you're forced into these perspectives and into these ideas. And I think we see that, and it's really it it's such a heartbreaking film in a way that almost feels optimistic. Um, and I think the way that it plays with perspective both makes, just as a film, as far as enjoyability, right, engagement, like it makes it a more interesting film, but it also delves so much deeper, like textually and thematically, into what the film is about. And it's just beautiful. I mean, the performances are incredible. It's a film that gets a lot better in rewatch. Like initially after watching it, like I liked it, but it didn't necessarily hit me, and it just stuck with me for so long and just burned away at my mind. And the more I like sat with it and thought about it, the more I just like completely fell in love with the film. It's yeah, a beautiful, beautiful work. One of Koreeda's best.
For sure. No, I'll definitely be touching on that one
Yeah, we'll
later.
continue this
We'll
conversation.
continue this conversation,
Yeah.
of course. My number 5, and this is again, it's similar vein to Barbie, where it's just a very important film for me personally, I feel, but also just a great theatrical experience. And that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I really like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. People like that film a lot more than me. I'm not in love with that film. I think it's got problems. This, I think, takes everything that worked about that first film and it amplifies it and it builds on it. And it really is, for me, like one of the best animated sequels we've probably ever gotten and probably ever will get. The animation styles, they're just all, it's such an experience and it feels like such a communally made piece of work, which obviously it is tainted somewhat by what we know about how the studios treated them. And it makes this film hard to talk about, but that's why I want to really emphasize the fact that this is a film made by individuals and you feel that sense that it was made by individuals and it feels like these individual voices really coming together. Yeah, there's a lot to rave about in terms of it is a trans allegory, I think, in terms of how that's subtly handled and how that's not just Gwen, it's Mars as well. It's everything. It's just about identity in general, and to explore that so in such a nuanced way, for what is, for all intents and purposes, a children's film, is incredible. And I think we need a lot more of that kind of thing.
Make all superhero movies trans.
Exactly. I mean, it's breeding rapper. It's superheroes are inherently about sort of
like the
identity
X-Men. Like, come on, it's all like
exactly.
it's all.
So, but yeah, to explore all of these things, while still obviously by being a children's film needing to be entertaining and needing to have fun action and needing to be engaging in that regard, it just makes for a very unique experience and like visually stunning, sounds like stunning, the score's stunning. Just everything about it really just astonished me in terms of how good it was, and it really made me rethink the first one. Even I was like, maybe I'm not giving it enough credit for what it's due, because this one, yeah, really just it shaped a lot of my thinking in a way that I did not expect Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 to with a film like with a film with a title like that. I did not expect
the part one. They dropped the part one.
It did drop the part one, didn't they? But I did not expect it to shape the way I view things in such a important manner, and therefore, yeah, it just has to be considered as one of the best films of the year, not just the best animated film of the year, not just the best animated film of the decade, one of the best animated films ever made. So yeah, 100%.
No, I mean, yeah, it was in my honorable mentions. It was close to my top 10. Transgender, one of the most important, superhero characters, probably my favorite superhero character ever. Just, yeah, really, really special film. As said, make all superhero movies trans. They're all trans. It's all there. My number 5, which I know we'll be talking about again later, is Justine Triet's Anatomy of a Fall. Again, we have a review for it. Oh God, this film. I mean, first of all, the obvious: Sandra Hüller, amazing. Milo Massager, amazing. Swan Arlett, amazing. All the performances, amazing. And just the way it plays with, truth and the challenge of what is truth? What does truth mean? How do we frame truth? It's that Godard quote: "The photography is truth, cinema is truth 24 times per second," and it is playing with that both textually and formally with how it's edited. I think it's the best edited film of the year. Probably my favorite cut of the year is in that courtroom sequence when we have the argument going on, and then it just cuts back to Milo's face, and then we just hear everything from then on. And I also think it has some of the best sound editing of the year, which isn't talked about that much, but the sound design in this is like incredible and shapes so much about how we perceive the film. But the way it plays with perspective and reveals perspective and never forces a perspective on you. It never tells you what to think about things, while also giving you enough to mount evidence, because in the end, there, like, the truth doesn't matter in this case. There's the quote from the film that you know, I can't, oh God, I can't remember the exact thing, but something like, it doesn't matter because an author killing her husband is just the more interesting story. And in the end, that's what it is. It's formal subjectivity in the name of questioning the reality of objectivity. And it just really begs the question: how do you be objective in something like this when forced to sort someone's actions into a binary, guilty, innocent?
Yeah, I would slightly push back against it, and I don't like, this is obviously me from a long place, but I think you are sort of signposted how to feel in certain points, but where the beauty of film comes from is that you're signposted to feel different things at very
Yeah,
different
that's what
times.
I was getting
So
at. Yeah,
in the end, you are allowed
right.
to
I
be
was getting
innocent.
at
But I
yes.
think but I
By
think
the
part of
end,
the film's
it doesn't give you.
real beauty and where the film really works is that the film does signpost, and that comes from Huller's
Because
performance as well in many
it
parts.
gets you on this up and down roller coaster when you're like this way, and then
Exactly.
you're this way, and
It
then you're
really
this way, and then by the
takes you in the
end,
directions, though, yeah. And then by the end,
it
you sort of
doesn't give
land
you
in the
an
middle. And that
answer. It
even
doesn't
comes
give you
through with like cinematography elements. Like sometimes that ski chalet looks incredible. Like you want to live there. Other times it's cold. It's this uninviting
and
place.
that's the
And it's
color
all
grading and
exactly.
using the shaky
Yeah.
cam and using like cameras within the world to capture it, and it's again playing with the
Yeah.
idea of truth captured through video. So yeah, and that's what I meant, like that by the end it doesn't give you an objective how to feel, which I think is quite similar to Women Talking in that way, and how it presents multiple different arguments but never tells you which one you should really take to
And
be
it's so
the
interesting
correct
that
one.
every argument it makes and every direction it takes you, it seems just as compelling as the
Right.
next. I think that's really hard to do. Like to make a character like Sandra Hiller's character, whose name is Sandra, which is very apt, since she doesn't feel like she's playing character.
No.
But the way it's about the performance and how it makes you, she really does make you hate her in certain
Right.
points. And other points, she really makes you empathize
I
with
mean,
her.
it's a
And
film that constantly shifts the goalposts, but in a way that feels so natural, right?
exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think,
And
and
in a
I
way that
mentioned this.
feels natural for a court
Mhm.
setting. Like it is
Yeah.
about that back and forth. And this, we may as well just transition this into my conversation about it as well.
Yeah.
At this point. So, but yeah, I really do view this as like the best courtroom drama ever made, and probably will be one of the best ever made
Yeah.
ever.
Oh, I fully agree. Right.
Exactly, just in the way that it uses this courtroom setting, it uses a setting that intrinsically takes a very private matter of this family, uh, whatever problem, and
Mhm.
just forces it into the public. And I think
Right.
you really see this, and that's why I think Daniel is the most important character in the film, because he's someone who can't discern public from private. He can't discern any of these things because of his
Mhm.
partial blindness, and that plays into it. And it's all very tightly constructed in that manner, and the way it sort of plays with your idea of perception. And like these things shouldn't have been so public. These things shouldn't. You
Mhm.
shouldn't be watching
Well,
these
and
things.
it's a thing where it's a question that legally demands an
Mm.
answer, but,
Exactly. It forces
there
you to
isn't
answer
but there
something you shouldn't
yeah,
answer.
because there isn't an answer for everything. Most things don't have objective answers, and in that case, you're forced to, invent your own answer, which it is, plays into the film. That's, it's a bit of the third act of the film, which is, again, just furthers the debate about what actually happened. Because, yeah, sometimes, like, we don't know, I mean, to get very existential, like, when you look at just like anything that you genuinely like believe in that isn't just like science, right?
Mm.
Like any sort of religion, like people can believe in a religion, and there's no real proof, for or against any religion. There's no proof that there is no, sort of religious or spiritual thing that exists. But we all have things that just feel natural to satisfy answers for us, whether that is believing in a religion or not. And like, who am I to say anything is correct or incorrect? I don't know. And to be honest, I probably never will. And none of us probably ever will know for sure about anything like that. And it's, same thing like with this. When something cannot be known, we cannot be known, and it's edited in a way where we will never know what happened with this. We have to invent an answer to satisfy to satisfy a conclusion, whether that is correct or incorrect. That doesn't really matter. It's the act of believing in something while it's here.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in the sort of hybrid of genres. It's in this merging of this marriage domestic drama with this courtroom drama, like by forcing it into a courtroom setting. Because like marriage dramas inherently force you to choose a side and choose who you empathize with more. That's in their nature. And in courtroom dramas as well are the same thing. So it's these two genres that are just fusing together to create such a unique just experience where you don't know what to think the
Well, and
entire
I think that's
time.
what's so special about the title, is that Anatomy of a
Yeah.
Fall can both be about the physical fall, but
Yeah.
also analyzing, and it's the anatomy of the fall of their marriage.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a interesting film on just so many layers. And I don't know what else to really say about this film, to be honest. It's just perfectly constructed in everything it's doing, performances, editing, screenplay. Like I'd give Sandra Hüller, like I think she for Lily Gladstone is view Sandra Hüller is. For me, I think the screenplay is worthy of winning. I think the editing is worthy of winning. I think this would be the most deserving Best Picture winner in the lineup that we got. So yeah, impeccable film. So my number 4 is The Holdovers, and this may seem a little fanciful compared to sort of the May Decembers, as sort of interesting now to be falling world, but there is something so unbelievably delightful, and Payne really did construct this film with such care and such tenderness. And he really gives you the sense that he understands these characters, and all of the comedy, a lot of it comes from, a lot of quite aggressive, abrasive manner in the way these characters interact with each other. But it's all from you understand where these places are coming from, and you get such a deep understanding and sense of these characters' thought processes, how they operate, how they interact with others, how they interact with themselves internally, that you just can't help but fall in love with their journey and their connections with one another, because you want to see them connect with each other. You sort of know where it's going. You know where a film like this ends. It's not doing anything new in that regard, but it is such a nice example of just watching fun characters engage with each other. And I think that's where the strength of this film really lies. It's in the ensemble, it's in the connection that they develop with one another, and that comes through the screenplay, but it's also the performances. And just that it builds this world around them that's so enjoyable to be in, where you could just feel like you could live in this world forever. And it's through the aesthetics as well, the aesthetic choices, which in turn it links to the themes of being stuck in the past and needing to move on. But it's all about building these characters and then building a world around it that is fun for them to operate in. And it just feels like Christmas, and that sounds maybe a bit cliche, a bit corny to say, but it is one of the best Christmas films I've seen. It is that type of film that you can just throw on every year. And I think Payne has really created an instant timeless classic as well. I think this is a timeless film in its setting and in what it's doing and in its messages and values. And I think this is just a delightful film that is really worthy of all the praise in the world. And even though it is a little slight compared to some of the other films on this list in terms of what it is actually doing, I think it is the best example that I've seen in a long time of what it's actually doing. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I also just Sessa, the fact that they just found him at the school, like insane, amazing performance. Hope that he has like an actual career as an actor, because, fantastic. All right, my number 4 is Wim Wenders' Perfect Days. Another one of my favorite performances of the year with Koji Yakusho. This film made me very, very emotional, and it was my last. I don't know. I think it hit me at just the right moment watching it. It was my last film of the Chicago International Film Festival. I'd seen like 18 films in a week. So it was a lot, and there was just a lot going on in my mind at just that specific moment in time. I had a lot going on. It felt like just everything was swirling all at once, and just to have a film like this that's just so tender and just about, again, it sounds incredibly cliche, but just the beauty of life, and just living, and the fact that we get to live, even if it is for a fairly insignificant time in the grand scheme of things, is just a nice thing. And, even though like once we live through a moment, we'll never get to have that moment again. You'll never be able to be an age that you've already been again. Those moments will be gone, and you can only, like, we're just forced to continuously move forwards. But I think just like, it's just finding the joy in the little things that make up, what can be perfect days. And I was just really, really struck by this. It sent me in very, very existential places. It made me cry a lot. There's a specific sequence where he plays a game of shadow tag with an old man towards the end of the film that just absolutely sent me into tears, because it's so simple. It's just two old men enjoying a children's game. But it's about the idea of just, I mean, it's tangent. A Lana Del Rey album called Lust for Life, which is this like very kind of like moody, but also a bit of upbeat album, just about the different things that give us like a lust for life. And even there's through all of like the bad, negative, horrible things, there is always something positive, even when everything feels horrible. And I am a relatively I don't know if I'm entirely cynical, but I have a hard time contextualizing things in a non-existential way. So everything feels like the biggest thing for me. So yeah, I don't know. This film just hit me in a really perfect place. Like I think about the sequence where he's on the bikes talking to his niece, and about like how we are orbiting, each other's planets, and sometimes we'll drift into other people's orbit and then drift out. It reminded me of the monologue at the dinner table from Before Midnight. Um, uh,
Mm.
and yeah, so I don't know. It hit me in a really, really special way. In the parking garage, walking back from the theater, I saw an old man who was cleaning like a toilet walking out, and it that also just set me into tears again, for absolutely no reason other than I was very in the feels at that point. So yeah, love everything
Yeah.
the film's doing. Vim Benders is God.
Yeah, it's a type of film that really could have very easily annoyed me, where I sort of get where a film's going and I feel like it's just going through the pace and not telling me anything that I didn't get from like the first 10 to 15 minutes. But with a film like this, it is so charming, as you say. I think tender is a good word. We
Mm.
just sort of want to experience it. Like, it doesn't matter
Yeah,
that you
you
know what it's
want to
doing. It
live in it.
doesn't
Like,
it doesn't matter that you sort of that the ideas are just sort of there in the first 10
mhm.
minutes. You know where the film's going, you know what it's doing, but you just want to experience it with this character, and it really does, as you say, make you just so happy and positive and optimistic. And
Yeah.
it's I would say it's the type of film again that you maybe need to be in a mood for, but I
Yeah.
feel like it does a good job of putting you in that mood anyway to a certain extent. So yeah, no, it is a good
Yeah.
choice. It is a good
Also, the
choice.
final shot is incredible with Koji Yakusho. Like, man deserves an
Mm.
Oscar nomination, but
Yes,
yeah.
he is excellent. He is truly excellent. My number 3 is, and we talked about this slightly before with you, but Monster.
Yeah.
And to springboard off what you're saying about the Rashomon structure, this is easily the best use of it I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's even in just the little details. It really just, and this is another sort of puzzle of the film, like May December, which really just, works for me a lot of the time. Where like even just a little moment of the boy, dropping his shoe, and then you find out why
Mhm.
that shoe's been dropped, and it's just this little
The
moment where
bathroom's already cut in, but, like, the stall,
exactly,
like,
and the
yeah.
bathroom as well, where every detail is paid off and it all feels like it's a complete package and it all feels very tightly constructed. And a lot of Rashomon style films tend to just sort of have one element and then introduce a whole new one with a different perspective and then introduce one. This one doesn't do that. It
Mhm.
introduces whatever in Act One, and then it builds on that and it plays with that, and it's playing with the same ideas throughout, but in very different ways and in very varied ways is what another thing I really loved about how each perspective is a very varied film. Like, they
Yeah.
feel quite different in tones in parts. Like, you've got the middle section that's quite like the hunt, and you've got the first section which is like this drama about this overprotective parent, and you've got the third one which is like a fantasy fairy tale about friendship. They're all very different. Like, you've got drama, thriller, and then I don't know, romance at the end, if you want to call it a romance, but equally fantasy. Like, it
Yeah.
depends. And it's so impressive in how it is able to build these characters. And you've even got like little elements that are probably often forgotten about, with like the headmistress in this film, like how she
Yeah, and her
interacts with the
child and,
story
like, the
and
yeah.
her child, and how it all just comes together and flows so seamlessly into another, where with each perspective, you're not just waiting for it to get to the point. like you're not just waiting for, okay, and now how do we get to this bit? You're actively engaged. You don't know where it's going. You know sort of where the final destination is, but even that is subverted in many cases. So you really don't know where this film is going at any point, despite it being this rational perspective, where you're just seeing one different perspective on the same event. You never truly understand what happened. And I think the ending is ambiguous, and I think that's very good as well. And as you said, just on a metasexual level, how it's playing with perception and how that works for the film as well. So just so impressive, so impactful, so emotional, but at times it's so tense and so thrilling. And it just really does take you on a roller coaster throughout. And I think that is it's the best use of a Rashomon structure I've ever seen, just in how it is able to take you on this roller coaster throughout. So 100% worthy of a top 10 spot, 100% worthy of all the acclaim it's gotten. And obviously you do regard them there, but one of the best films of the year. It's really close between this and number two. I think number one is fairly definitive in my mind, but it could easily be number two. This one on any given day. So
yeah. I mean, my 3 and 2 are really close. I'll get into it, and we'll talk about this later. We literally just did a review for it. It's Andrew Hayes' All of Us Strangers. I mean, just a beautiful film. It made me cry more than any other film I watched this year. I mean, just from that sequence with Andrew Scott and his dad onwards, I really never stopped crying from that point. Again, just damn, a lot of queer films up here. Very interesting. But but no, I mean, it's just there's just such a great dissection of queerness in this, and how Andrew Scott's character, how he has all these insecurities about his identity and him being queer, and how that relates to him never really getting to talk with his parents about it, and how we're just watching really these pieces of his psyche and his consciousness interact with himself and challenge his own self-perception of his queer identity, and just his identity in general, and how he's living his life now. And it's, I think, something that we can all connect to in some way or another. But it expresses that idea in such a deeply personal way, that's just so heartbreaking. And I mean, we literally just recorded like a 30-minute review, and I know we're going to talk about it for you in a few minutes. But I'll just leave it at that for now. But it's a astonishing piece of cinema. So
no, we'll definitely get to that one. My number two, and we've mentioned before, there's no point talking much more about it. I feel like we talked very extensively about Anatomy of a Fall, as I said. Perfect film would be my deserving Best Picture winner here, even potentially over number one. Is this doing more? Potentially. Like, this would be my Best Picture of the year. So Anatomy of a Fall, number two, easy.
Yep. My number two is Past Lives, film that I saw early in the year, but has stuck with me ever since. I am very drawn to the right person, wrong time type of romance films. I mean, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I think, is one of the greatest films ever made. One of my favorites of all time. And I think that this really draws into. I mean, I think almost in a vacuum, Before Sunrise is that type of film as well. Without the context of the other two. So this film I just think is genius from its opening frame, and how from the opening moment we're observing through this hyper subjective lens. And I really think the cinematography doesn't get a lot of credit, I guess, for how much it's doing, but it really does feel like an active character in the film, and the framing choices and who it chooses to include and exclude within a frame, and about this like kind of high wire act of character dynamics, and Nora, Arthur, and Haesung, and all of their connection with each other, and how it teases itself as a romance film, but it never at its core is a romance film. It's really a film about letting go, and I think that the ideas of love and romance, they're such hyper specific things that it feels so unique to, like, the idea of loving something, it feels like such a unique emotion compared to others because it's obsessive, which can very quickly lead to negative things. But this never sensationalizes. It never turns into like this like screaming match at any point. It's all so measured and just I mean beautiful is the only way I can describe it. And the way that it articulates this, I mean, one of the lines of the year I think is uh I love you're someone I love you and you're someone who leaves, right? Like that bit again, gonna butcher the quote, but like it's you're someone who leaves and I love you because you're someone who leaves, which is why he must let go. And it's just there's these inherencies to some of us as people where we won't connect. The Inyan isn't there, and but that's part of the beauty of living is that we will encounter so many people and find all of these people, and even if they aren't the perfect match for us, it's just about this web of connection that we built throughout our life. So yeah, really really incredible film. And the fact that this is debut, like fuck off.
Yes.
I come on, Celine Song, this is amazing.
No, she's up in the bar for all of us, isn't she? But no, this is a film that I walked home from the cinema after watching it just because I wanted to lengthen the journey and be in my feels a bit more. So if that's a testament to this film's quality. It was like my number 16. I listed my number 15 in terms of honorable mentions. Essentially, this was another honorable mention of me. So, but yeah, my number one is All of Us Strangers, and as you said, we've got a review. We explained why. So I guess I'll just touch on the element that like it takes this very broad idea of like life and death, and that's like the broadest idea you could possibly go with a film. But for exploring like ghosts in this manner, and which are intrinsically sort of a cross between life and death, you can go into a lot of very interesting stuff that I think this film really does sort of use, and it uses these contradictions and it uses these ghosts which are inherently contradictions, and it's all about the pushing and the pulling and like finding connection, holding on to connection in the past, love, pain, hurt. It's all in these contradictory emotions that just overwhelm you as a viewer when you're watching this, and you can't help but just feel emotion. Like you don't quite know what you're feeling at any given point. Like, is it melancholy? Is it joy of this newfound relationship? Like, you don't know what you're feeling, but you're feeling something, and it's through that contradiction, and it's through them releasing it all at the end and restraining, holding, and then releasing it at the end, and then drawing out. Like a lot of films would have been probably tempted to zoom in, as a final image, but this one chooses to zoom out. It chooses to place this in a very subjective point and go, no, this is an experience for everyone, and this is just one small part of their lives, and just you feel like you know a lot about these characters, but at the end of the day you don't, and you don't know these characters, and these are just flashes of memory for you. Now they imprint into your mind. They're not these people. They're not real people even. They're memories within themselves, and that's what really just gobsmacked me with this film. I think it is one of the best.
Oh, we got a gobsmack on this one. Wow,
gobsmacked. That's a big word. But yeah, like one of the best of the decade. Best of the year. Well, one of the best films of all time. And say that's recency bias, I don't give a because it's amazing and incredible, and you should all rewatch it if you've already seen it, and if you've already rewatched it, rewatch it again, and if you've already rewatched it twice, rewatch it a third time, I reckon, probably just to make sure that you're not missing anything.
My number one is a film that you might not want to rewatch, and that would be fair.
No, that's true.
I've seen it 3 times now. It's The Zone of Interest by Jonathan Glazer. This film, it really, it feels like a new cinematic language, to be honest. Like it really feels like Glazer did something groundbreaking for cinema, and just a way to articulate evil. Because throughout film and all these types of things, like we have this idea of good and bad, and what makes a good character, what makes a bad character, what a protagonist, an antagonist, a villain. And it's such a binary and objective way at looking at things. And with The Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer challenges all of our perceptions of that idea. that we've built up through years of watching films and just experiencing life. And he paints, the Nazis, this Nazi family living just outside, separated by a singular wall from the Auschwitz internment camp, where one of the most like horrific human atrocities ever was committed. And they're just going about their life, and they're concerned with things that are related to them, right? About Rudolf also, about like him leaving, and Hedwig wanting to stay, and it becomes this family drama in a way, and it challenges you, and it almost dares you to get invested in it, because in the backdrop, even during their sequence where they're arguing, you can see the smoke in the background of the camp, and it's this deeply like terrifying thing, and it's one of the most horrifying films I've ever seen. But you never see anything horrifying. If you were living under a rock, right, you never knew that any of this happened. Like it's alluded to that there are these camps and stuff, but it never shows anything bad happening. It never explicitly states that these people are doing bad things. Obviously they are doing bad things because we know what they were doing, but within the context of the film, and that's almost the most horrifying thing, because Glazer lets us complete the story in our mind. It's like a fill in the blank where he started it, and then we don't want to complete it. He's like created this language, and he's asking us to write the last word in the language, and it is so deeply painful to write the last word in that language. And I just think that is such a feat of direction that we've never seen anything like that before, and I don't think we're ever going to see anything like it again. Like, I think the thing that you can compare it to, I guess, is like Come and See, or something like that. But I mean, even then, it's doing different things. But just as far as just the general feeling of just almost like nausea that you can respond to it with. And as you mentioned, the sound design plays so much into that. The fact that the sounds of people dying are mixed at the exact same level as the sounds of like birds chirping, because it's all just background noise to these people. It's a really, just nauseating film, because it asks you to connect with and almost identify with the protagonists in a way that you really don't want to. And again, I don't know if we're ever going to see anything as impressive as this from a directorial standpoint for a while. Just Glazer achieves something so specifically horrifying that is just so hard to be replicated. So again, we have like 30-40 minute conversation about this up on the channel that you can go watch if you want to hear more thoughts about it. But
it feels like an experiment in the best way possible, and it's a type of film that would be so interesting to show a child or someone who doesn't know.
I wouldn't show this to a child.
But exactly, the thing is, obviously, you can't. But it would be so fascinating to see how they reacted to it. Obviously, that is a hypothetical. We're not going to be showing it to children.
But no, I mean, it's true, because just like how children perceive this, because like...
But like, it's rated 12A in the UK.
Because again, it doesn't show anything. Like...
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like 12 would be an acceptable...
It's all about how you engage with it. I mean, because especially considering like everything going on in the world right now, which we don't need to get into, but there's a lot of really horrific violence.
Horrifically timeless, this film.
Yeah, like it's terrifying how timeless this is. Like, obviously there's the obvious one with Israel and Palestine, but also like, in the Congo, there's, there's genocide going on everywhere, which is terrifying. Like there's too much, genocide and like human atrocity to even cover within a day in the news. And a lot of the time, like, but even when there is, we just ignore it because it is just easier to ignore. And I think it really challenges our perception of that, and how we do kind of just ignore that because it is easier to move on. And obviously we aren't, standing directly next to it, but in the age of social media, like, we have access to all these things. We can know about all these things, but it is easier to move on. And like, is there really a right answer to how to respond to that? I don't know. I don't know if there really is, because the world can be a lot to take in sometimes, and I think that this film just really challenges how you will perceive the world. Like my in Letterboxd, the first thing I wrote about it was that familiar sounds, like familiar noises sound different. Like it really if you really engage and connect with this, it can be earth shattering. So
Yeah, and I find it hard to believe anyone who watches it can't engage with it in some
yeah,
way. It is experimental, but it's not inaccessible.
yeah.
Like it's a, yeah.
Like I showed this to
So
my mom and she liked it a lot. Like,
exactly. It is experimental. It is a hard watch. It's a hard
mhm.
sell, but it's not like you're not going to get what's going on. Yeah. It feels like Glazer is so competently able to convey his ideas and
Yeah,
concisely and efficiently and just with such a command over every element of this film that yeah,
yeah.
Glazer just approaches it with confidence that you sort of can't help but become wrapped up and just take what he's
Like
offering
I think
and
Glazer might be
think
like
about it.
the best director we like not like storyteller or filmmaker as a whole. Like I think there are other people who do that better, as I mentioned, like
It's a
contemporarily, like
command over all
Quincy on
the
like Telluride art.
elements,
But yeah,
which
but just as a director, as a way to communicate theme and idea through the form of film, and again, like as you mentioned in your like how the way it plays with audio and visual, it just it feels like pure cinema in that way, but it feels like it's inventing something new with how sound and image interact. Like it feels like we've never seen sound and image interact in a
no,
way like this before.
no.
And that's what you do as a director, and that's why I feel like maybe not there are other people who are better storytellers, but I think as a director,
To be
I
able
don't
to
know if
bring
yeah,
together all these
to
elements and
command an
just have
audience in
such a
this way. I don't
yeah,
know if there's anybody who does it better than him. Like, or at least with this film.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's yeah. Yeah. But that is our those are our top 10s.
Then
Thomas is editing this, so Thomas, you're gonna
yes,
put this on screen right now. What each of our
yes,
top 10s are.
indeed.
So you can see them on screen right now. But yeah, I mean, overall though, what a year for cinema. What a
Oh
year
yeah,
for
100%.
cinema.
I listed 5 honorable mentions. I could have listed another 10 probably. There was
Exactly.
a
Exactly.
lot to choose from this year when selecting this list. I'm still not completely happy with this
Yeah.
list, but yeah, I feel like it's in as good a place as it probably will ever be,
Absolutely.
and I feel confident that these films will stay in my mind for 2033 when we think about our top 10 films. Then I'll still be thinking about these films. So yeah, no, completely agree. Great year for cinema. The best, some of the very best films I've ever seen have been released this year,
Yeah.
and that is not hyperbole. That is not overemphasized. That's not recency bias. I genuinely believe this is a great year for film.
Absolutely. 100% agree. But yeah, you can put your top 10s in the comments. I know this was a long video, but hopefully it was interesting in some way. But yeah, we'll be doing our personal awards in a very fun video that will be announced soon. But plenty of reviews, still plenty of stuff. I mean, we're into 2024 now, so
We
plenty
are.
of fun stuff with that. So you can stick around for all that. But until next time, thank you everybody for watching. Stay safe and goodbye.